Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whatever time it is that you've joined us, we're glad you're here. I'm the Reverend Cheryl Butler, and this is Journey Road Ministries, where we strive to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with our God. We hope that this time with us will be a small respite for you from the many stresses that are in the world today. Whether it's from the virus that seems to be no end in sight, or the terrible fires that are raging on our western coast, or the hurricanes on the east, the many eruptions of violence around the world. We pray for the peaceful protesters and for the police, that we might find some mutual respect and solutions to these problems. Today we're going to hear about forgiveness, and that seems to be a great need in our world today. There's so much anger in the world and such divisiveness. I think in order to heal, we're going to have to come to some reckoning with forgiveness. I think to start out today, I'd like to read the Psalm for this Sunday, Psalm 114, and reading it from Nan Merrill's Psalms for Praying, which is a lovely interpretive version of the Psalms. Come, all you who have wandered far from the path, who have separated yourselves from love. A banquet is prepared for you in heart's secret room. There you will find the way home. A welcome ever awaits you. Even as you acknowledge the times you have erred, the forgiveness of the beloved will envelop you. Call upon the beloved when fear arises, when you feel overwhelmed. The eternal listener will heed your cry. You will find strength to face the shadows. Befriend all that is within you. Discover the secret room in your heart. Then will abundance blessings enter your home, and you will welcome the divine guest who is ever with you. Amen. And now we have the Dr. William Painter, who is going to share a much needed message this morning about forgiveness.
Well, good evening. Good morning. Good pandemic Sunday. I'm Dr. William Painter. This is Journey Road Ministries, because we're all on a journey. I want to do a song tonight to open up. As a real sweet song, and it goes with our theme today, and that is love and forgiveness. It wasn't written by Steve Goodman, but Steve Goodman made it famous. Steve Goodman performed it. It's called The Dutchman, and his friend called him up. He said, I wrote a song about an old sailor in Amsterdam in his twilight years. And Steve Goodman said, well, what do you know about Amsterdam? The fellow said, oh, I don't know anything about Amsterdam. I just wrote a song about it. So there you go. And I'm going to do this song, and you will bear with me, please. You will forgive me. The Dutchman's not the kind of man who keeps his thumb jammed in the dam that holds his dreams in. Well, that's a secret that only Margaret knows. When Amsterdam is golden in the summer, Margaret brings him breakfast, and she believes him. He thinks the tulips bloom beneath the snow. He's mad as he can be, but Margaret only sees that sometimes. Sometimes she sees her unborn children in his eyes. Well, let us go to the banks of the ocean, where the walls rise above the Zuider Zee. Long ago I used to be a young man, and dear Margaret remembers that for me. The Dutchman still wears wooden shoes, his cap and coat are patched with the love that Margaret sewed there. Sometimes he thinks he's still in Rotterdam, and he watches the tugboats down the canals and calls out to them when he thinks he knows the captain. Till Margaret comes to take him home again, through unforgiving streets that trip him, though she holds his arm. Sometimes he thinks he's alone and he calls her name. Well, let us go to the banks of the ocean, where the walls arise above the Zuider Zee. Long ago I used to be a young man, and dear Margaret remembers that for me. The winter winds whirl the windmills round, she winds his muffler tighter, and they sit in the kitchen. Some tea with a whiskey keeps away the dew, and he sees her for a moment, calls her name, and Margaret makes the bed up singing some old love song. A song she learned when she was very new. He hums a line or two, they sing together in the dark. The Dutchman falls asleep and Margaret blows the candle out. Well, let us go to the banks of the ocean, where the walls arise above the Zuider Zee. Long ago I used to be a young man, and dear Margaret remembers that for me. I did it that time. Good for me. And good for you, because you had to suffer through it. The Dutchman. Let me put up my guitar, and I'll get back to you in just a minute or so. Okay, well, you survived that. This is... What is this week, according to the Revised Common Lectionary? It is Proper 19 for September 13th, 2020. And there's some really great readings in here, including the one where, Moses is crossing the Red Sea, and then the waters come crashing down on the chariots of the pharaohs, and I couldn't help but think of the events of the recent weeks where certain boats were sunk by their own doing. No one was injured, so we can laugh about that. And in this set of readings, we have Genesis 50:15 through 21, where Joseph's brothers ask him. They say they're sorry for what they did to him, and they present themselves to him as slaves, and he forgives them. He says, "Am I in the place of God? Even though you intended to do harm for me, God intended it for good, in order to preserve a numerous people as he is doing today. So have no fear. I myself will provide for you and your little ones." That's Joseph. But the gospel reading comes from Matthew, and I wanted to throw that in there because the two are really quite related, and it is about forgiveness. Matthew 18, verses 21 through 35. Then Peter came and said unto him, "Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times? And Jesus said to him, "Not 7 times, but I tell you, 77 times. For this reason the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his slaves. When he began reckoning, one who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. And as he could not pay, his lord ordered him to be sold, together with his wife and children and all his possessions, and payment to be made. So the slave fell on his knees before him, saying, "Have patience with me, I will pay you everything." And out of pity for him, the lord of that slave released him and forgave him the debt. But that same slave, as he went out, came upon one of his fellow slaves who owed him 100 denarii, and seizing him by the throat, said, "Pay what you owe." Then this fellow slave fell down and pleaded with him, "Have patience, and I will pay you." But he refused. Then he went and threw him into prison until he would pay the debt. When his fellow slaves saw what had happened, they were greatly distressed, and they went and reported to their lord all that had taken place. Then his lord summoned him and said to him, "You wicked slave, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me. Should you not have had mercy on your fellow slave, as I had mercy on you?" And in anger, his lord handed him over to be tortured until he would pay his entire debt. So my heavenly Father will also do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother or sister from your heart. Thus endeth the gospel. Now, this is an often cited passage because it's one of the few times in the New Testament that we get a hint of a vengeful God. And but then you have to ask yourself, how does this fit? So, okay, here's Jesus, and I can't remember who it was wanted to know. Peter, of course, it's always Peter. Came up to him and said, someone sins against me, how many times should I forgive them? These disciples are always looking for recipes. What's the recipe? What should we be doing? And Jesus says, "Oh, no, 70 times 7. Well, he's going, okay, I can't count that high. I mean, that's a lot. That's a big number. Big number. And in fact, this passage has another big number in it. And another big number in it was the amount of money that the slave owed his master. Okay, he owes him 10,000. What is it? 10,000 talents. Well, a talent at the time was the largest coinage of money. It was like $100 bill. I don't know what it was worth, but it was the largest denomination. And 10,000 was an unimaginable number. I mean, if you can imagine being in a society that didn't have electricity and mostly didn't have a lot of running water. So when the sun went down, the stars came out, and when the sun came up, it was daytime, and and you counted things, and count to 10,000. Just go ahead and count to 10,000. All right, it'll take you a while. It's a huge, big number. We can just say, oh, 10,000 this, 1,000,000 that. We don't think about it. But, take away all our cultural attributes, as it were, all our luxuries, and sit out there and count to 10,000. That's a long time. And that's a big number. So this slave owes him a huge number. And in the second instance, the slave that owes the slave money, it's a denarii. It's the smallest denomination, it's like a penny, And so the slave is forgiven a huge amount. I mean, he's looking at being sold. His wife and his children are going to be sold. Different owners, they don't sell them as a bundled package. They sell them, and all his possessions. And he pleads, he asks for mercy, and his Lord gives him mercy. And then, but someone asks him for mercy for a minor amount. He's cruel. And then the Lord says, okay, well, I'm just going to torture you until you pay your debt. And this is a parable. It's always a parable. There was not a Lord who had a slave that owed him 10,000 talents. That didn't. Jesus was telling a story. And through the story, through the metaphor, through the parable, hopes to tell us something about God and about our lives. So, forgiveness is really important. And the question we always face is, well, how many times should I forgive somebody? And I'm going to tell you a story. It's not as interesting or creative as Jesus' story, but this comes from another pastor. I heard in Paris. He was a UCC pastor serving at the American Church in Paris. And I went there, and he was wonderful. And he talked about, his sermon was about forgiveness. And he said that he had been the pastor of a church, and the treasurer of the church stole all their money. and spent it all. They couldn't recuperate it, couldn't recover it. And they caught him, and he was unrepentant. He didn't care, you know. He was just going to go do his time. And this pastor was really disturbed by this, by the fact that the man was unrepentant. The man wasn't sorry he did it. And the injury to the church was a hurtful thing. I mean, it really hurt the church. Didn't close the church, or it wasn't death to the church, but you know, someone comes along and just takes all your money and spends it all, and you trusted them, and it wouldn't matter if it was a dime, you know. He broke your trust. And so this pastor went to visit him regularly in prison. Man was in prison for like 5 years. It was, you know, serious crime. And so the pastor would go regularly. I don't know whether it was once a month, in hopes that this man would say, "I'm sorry, please forgive me." And he never would. He never would. And the pastor was caught in a dilemma. I mean, how could he forgive somebody who wasn't sorry, you know, who wasn't asking for mercy? I mean, how do you forgive that? And should you forgive that? And ultimately, what he decided was, it's after, I think, 3 years of him visiting and wrestling with the problem, he said that it was his own heart that needed him to forgive this man, to let it go. Whether the man sought forgiveness or not, it was an ongoing injury to this pastor's heart, to his soul, to his anxiety, to his emotions, to his interior world. It was hurtful to not forgive this man. And so he forgave him, even though he didn't ask for forgiveness. Not for the man, but for himself. And I think this is what Jesus is getting to when he talks about, you know, just like the Lord, I'm going to torture you till you pay your debt. We are tortured until we pay that debt. We are tortured until we either ask for forgiveness or until we give forgiveness. We are tortured because forgiveness makes the world go round. It's hard to forgive people we don't want to forgive. I read a lot of comments about people who deny the virus exists, or they deny that the president lies, or they deny that black people are getting shot by white people, or that racism exists in this country. And it makes me really angry. It makes me really, really angry, you know, because in part, you know, because they don't believe the virus is real, they don't mask up, they spread the virus, and I'm being threatened by their behavior. And it's really, really hard for me to forgive them. But I can't go around all the time in an unforgiven mode. I can't do that. I hate it. It makes me angry. It makes me upset. It makes me bitter. It makes me, you know, my wife says, I'm an optimistic person. I think people are basically good. I think even the worst people, they have a divine spark inside of them. And maybe it's really, really, really tiny, you know, but it's there. And that we all have a divine spark, and some burn more brightly than others, and some can be fanned into great flames to do great good in the world. I really believe that. I truly believe that. And so I believe that everybody I meet is basically good. They're just misguided, or they're afraid, or they're angry, or they're hurting, or there's something in their life that causes them to lash out and to be hateful and mean. It doesn't mean I go, oh, thanks a lot for, you know, the road rage incident. I haven't experienced it, but you know, you imagine driving down a road and somebody flips you off and he's angry at you, angry, and you go like, wow, you know, I'm upset and I hate that guy, but you have to forgive them. I mean, even though they're not asking you for forgiveness, because if you don't, you carry that inside you. You carry it inside you, and it makes you bitter. And I believe people are basically good. So even that guy, you know, who's shaking his fist and calling you names as he passes by, maybe he's trying to get to the hospital. Maybe his wife passed away. Maybe he's about to lose his job. Maybe his parents hate him. Maybe. I have no idea. He's a stranger to me. I do not know him. I cannot speak to why he acts that way. And when I believe that people are basically good and they kind of prove me wrong, then I'm disappointed. And my wife says, well, that's the rent you pay on the dream. And so you can have that dream. She says, you can have that dream about people being basically good. But it doesn't come free. It comes with a price. And sometimes the price is disappointment. But your perception of reality doesn't change reality. And I think this is a very important message, both in the Joseph story, where his brothers say that they're really, really sorry, and he forgives them. Don't we all feel good? Don't we feel really great about that? We know they did him dirty. He says, it's okay. I will feed you. I'll take care of you. And when Jesus says, you forgive them, 70 a big number. You forgive them a big number. And even if they have a big debt. And we all owe God a big debt. We don't do what we're supposed to do. I certainly don't do what I'm supposed to do. I'm afraid. I don't want to die. I don't do things that I should be doing to be a good Christian. I've mentioned that before. I'm not a good Christian. I try hard, but I'm not a good one. And I ask for forgiveness, and I ask for strength, and I ask for the ability to love people who don't love me back, who may hate me. And I ask for forgiveness for being mean to people, because sometimes I'm mean to people. I found out the other day, I was talking to a woman, and we go back, I'd say, 10 years or so. And I was working at a university where she worked. She was there before me. And so they gave me an office, and I went, I just blinders on, went to my office and started settling in, and she was there. And she said, and I was talking to her, was it Friday? I think it was Friday, yesterday. And she said, you kicked me out of your office the very first day. I said, what? I did? And she goes, yeah, you kicked me out of your office. She said, I was supposed to be there to help you transition, answer any questions you might have had. And you said, thank you very much. You didn't need my help, and would I please leave now? What a mean, and I wasn't, I don't even remember that. I really liked this person a lot. And the idea that I would be mean to her like that would hurt her feelings. I told her I was really sorry they did that. I said, if I did that, I'm really, really sorry, because that's not a very nice thing to do. She was laughing about it. She said, oh, no, it's okay. She forgave me. But she kept that in her head all these years, 10 years. I've known her and worked with her on and off. And she kept that in her head. When she forgave me for it. And I didn't even know that I couldn't remember. There are so many things I do in my life that I don't recognize as being mean or cruel. My parents weren't the nicest people in the world, so sometimes things come out of my mouth and people get a shocked look in their eyes. I'm like, what? Did I say something wrong? And I might have said something that would crush a person, and I don't mean to do that. I don't want to crush people. I don't want to hurt people, but I do. And sometimes I hurt them, badly. I think about when I was an adolescent, and I wasn't a very nice person. I was really not a nice person. I look back on the things I did, the people that I probably hurt. Facebook is great, right? Because you can hook up with people that you used to know 50 years ago. And then those memories start coming back, there was this, and I have apologized, and I was forgiven for this, but when I was 15 years old, I didn't no cell phone, so I would ride my bike to a payphone, and call my girlfriend, so I could have a private conversation. and never told my parents about it because I didn't want them to know that I had a girlfriend. And so this one girl really liked her a lot. She went off to summer camp, and while she was gone, I picked up another girlfriend. Now remember, I'm 14 years old. Okay, so I can be forgiven a little bit of bad judgment. Anyway, I was just like, this girl got along. I think first one named Corey, and the second one named was Anna Maria. And I thought she liked her, and she was really sweet. Well, Corey came back, and so as I knew she would. And I called her up, and she said, well, so how was did you miss me? Oh, yeah, I missed you a lot, And did you date any other girls? Oh, no, I wouldn't date any other girls. You're the only one for me, Corey. And then I hear this other voice on the line, and it's Anna Maria. She goes, oh, really? Never underestimate the power of female companions, okay? And I was caught dead, red-handed. I mean, just caught dead out in a flat-out lie. And I have since apologized to Corey. I'm not sure she remembers. I think she might remember. It was the girls were giggling over it. None of this is serious. But I have a lot of that. A lot of debt. 10,000. I'm pretty sure it's 10,000 talents worth of debt, and probably more. And I ask for forgiveness of that from people that I've hurt, and if I can't find them, I ask for forgiveness in prayer. And I then strive to forgive what people have done to me, and that's really hard to do. When someone has wronged you, and they haven't said they're sorry, and you have to figure out how to forgive them so that your heart can heal. Jesus points the way for us on how to live. Father will also do every one of you. If we cannot forgive, we will be tortured, and we torture ourselves until that debt is paid off. Learn to forgive. Learn to forgive yourself first, and learn to forgive others. And recognize that whatever they have done to trespass upon you, maybe they didn't mean to. And if they did mean to, forgive them anyway, because it's your heart and your soul that needs to heal. Well, that's the message for today. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Be safe. Be careful. Bye.